If you become a department of no or someone that just makes their life more difficult, then you're not going to be sought as a business partner.
How did you choose your path? Because you spent very little time in law firm and you came in-house very fast. What happened?
As I started working with commercial clients, I became fascinated by the work that they were doing. And I was always sad when our deal ended. I was jealous and envious that they were working with engineers and coders and designers. That's what really got me excited.
Tell us the best advice you ever got.
The person who was the leader of the commercial practice, I said, gee, I really love the work that I'm doing, but I'd love more exposure in these other areas. And she closed the door. I mean, she got up and closed the door behind her. I'm like, oh my goodness, did I just say something to offend her? And she said, you have to remember, you are in charge of your career now. If you want more exposure to intellectual property, you're gonna have to build that bridge. You shouldn't wait for this to come falling from the sky.
So if you can tell us some mistakes you made in your career.
I don't know if we have enough time, Amit, to go through all my mistakes.
Brian Bloch, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Brian, I've seen your journey, how you progressed, starting your career in a law firm and now currently at CLO with SimpliSafe for over 10 years. Tell us, how can a lawyer choose their path, like becoming a partner in a law firm versus going in-house? How can somebody choose their path?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I think the most important part is that to understand as early as possible that there are lots of different paths, that there isn't just one path. When I was in law school, I felt that the singular outcome of the top students and of the top folks in my class was to go to a law firm and to stay in a law firm, become a partner, even in that same law firm, and that was the sign of real success. And as I started on that journey, I realized quickly that there were many different paths, and that some of the folks at the firm that I was working with, who I had the most respect for, were the ones who went off and did different things and explored different career paths. And that got me thinking from an early age too, from an early stage of my career, that I should be keeping my eyes open for these different types of career paths because that might be what's most rewarding for me. So I would say just to not be fixed into a singular set of what success is or what a career path needs to be, especially now in the age of AI and this technological inflection that we're in right now. There are going to be new careers and new jobs and new industries that don't even exist as of the airing that we're talking right now, that by the time folks in law school graduate, that will be new enterprises that will be very exciting and compelling for lots of folks. And so to not be too close-minded on what any one career path might need to be.
How did you choose your path? Because you spent very little time in law firm and you came in-house very fast. What happened?
Yeah, no, I went in house, and the idea of firm life is something that just quickly did not resonate with me. I didn't see that career path as being one that was gonna be one that I would find uh enjoyable for for work life reasons. But most importantly, as I started working with commercial clients, I became fascinated by the work that they were doing. And I was always sad when our deal ended that I would, have to turn my attention to other matters. I was jealous and envious that they were working with engineers and coders and designers and graphical designers and technologists. And I found just, in the brief moments of living in their shoes and attending their meetings and meeting those folks and working with them, that's what really got me excited. And it became apparent to me early on that that was going to be the career path for me. And so my eyes turned to moving in house pretty early in my career, only because I was just overwhelmed by all the great work and interesting problems that they were solving and working on, and I wanted to be a part of it. So I jumped early at that change of career path, and it was also coupled with I was just unhappy in the career path that I was on too. So it felt like every fiber of me was telling me to jump and to make that change.
Beautiful. So if a younger lawyer who listened to this conversation right now who's still figuring out which path to choose. If they want more variety in their life, they want to talk to a coder, an engineer, a marketing professional, a sales guy as well, and they all of them are coming to a general counsel or an in-house counsel for problems. Choose the in-house path. However, if you want to be diving deep in a particular law of business, particular side of business, particular side of law, let's say M&A or IP or family law, then you stick with law firm. Is that correct?
Yeah, but, and not to make it too oversimplistic, but I think a law firm is a great place to get exposed to lots of different areas of law and to get great training. So I would not go back and have not I wouldn't have chosen not to go and start at a law firm and get exposed to a lot of different areas of law. And, it was hard work and it was tough work, but it developed me into a place where I could go in-house and add value. It's gonna be hard to get that first in-house job if you don't come to the table with something with a skill set that can add value even immediately. There tends to be less training and development opportunities that are as abundant in-house as they are in law firms. So the onus really shifts to you to drive your training and development. Whereas in the law firm, you're just surrounded by it as a sort of an everyday occurrence. So there's a risk reward there. But I really benefited a lot from having sort of a general M&A corporate IP background to start my career. And that gave me a lot of confidence that I could jump in house and start adding value right away while I continue to develop. But it was really on my volition that I was continuing the learning and development in areas that were interesting and impactful to me.
Brilliant. Brian, tell us how can a good lawyer become a great general counsel?
That is a great question. I think, when you move in house, it's incumbent upon, all the attorneys, but really everyone who works there to really deeply understand the business. Um, and for me, I think it not only understand the business, but understand the customers, understand sort of, taking a 360 look at your business and understand how the customers perceive you, the value you add to the customers, the role you play in their lives, what the sort of the purchase decision and what are they trusting you to do? And then understanding it from the company perspective, the real business issues, the teams that work at your company, what's driving them? What matters to them? What makes them successful, and what are they worried about? Because for in-house counsel, they're going to have there's going to be less attention and care for the legal particulars. They want you to help solve a business problem, and you need to speak their language. You need to understand the risks that they're living with, the goals that they need to meet, the KPIs that they're sitting on top of, the business objectives that they're being asked to meet. Because if you don't appear to be part of that solution, they're going to find ways to kind of work around you or not engage you early enough where you can really add the most value and be as impactful. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you become a department of no, or someone that just makes their life more difficult, or if that's the perception even, then you're not going to be sought as a business partner, as a thought partner. You're not going to be included in those early design sessions and moments where actually you can add the most value and spot issues at a time when things haven't been set yet. So you can build in whether it's a privacy by design or compliance by design or security mindset. Once that design is closed, it becomes a lot harder to make these types of decisions or improvements later on. And you can also be viewed as someone who's slowing down the development, slowing down the product, slowing down the go to market. And those all sort of work against you as an in-house counsel. So it's really, I think, being viewed as a business partner like everyone else, less of just a lawyer and more of someone who can help solve problems and be known as having a real critical eye to kind of spot things that maybe other folks don't spot because of our like attention to detail and looking at things from a different perspective. So it's all of those things, but I think it's really approaching yourself as a business person first, who brings um, legal risks and legal analysis to the table, but that isn't what defines you entirely. Like you're more than just that. And I think the great general counsels and the great in-house counsels are one who quickly put themselves in those internal client shoes and starts thinking and operating the way they do. You can build a ton of trust, and you'll be sort of brought and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You'll be brought to the table sooner, and that's when you can actually provide the most value. And then it just sort of it's that cycle that keeps on solidifying itself. And those I think those are the in-house attorneys who are the most successful.
Beautiful, man. This is really helpful. Brian, I saw that you have over 2.5 decade of legal career with you. So much beautiful experiences. Tell us about the hardest chapter of your career, and what did it teach you?
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, there were a lot of hard chapters in my career, and a lot of ups and downs. So I think the bigger picture is that you need to have you know y- you need to you need to have some perseverance. The in-house life, there's a lot of turbulence out there. Companies merge, um, companies go out of business. There are things that are companies go public. There are things that sort of go are out of your hands, and you have to understand that that it's sort of a long road. And if when I started right from the very beginning in my law firm days, about a year and a half or 2 years in is when 9/11 happened. And, my class, my 2nd or 3rd year, we were 2nd or 3rd years, our whole class was let go. And this was a common phenomenon across corporate departments across the country, here in the Boston area in particular. And, this was very challenging, as now all the new positions that were opening up, there were literally hundreds of people applying for each one. And the competition was very hard. And, you're at an early stage in your career where you have a lot of self-doubt. You still don't feel as though you've developed enough, or you know enough. So I would say that, that was probably, even though it was early in my career, that was a moment in time where a lot of people who were similarly situated to me left the practice of law. They left the state of Massachusetts where I live, because the market was not so great here, and they took different paths. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't consider that too. It was tough times. But so, I would say that, there is a perseverance in the work that we do. Um, that I think you need to just that kind of goes into the grit of what it takes to be, I think, a successful attorney, but a successful in-house attorney.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. I learned one thing, Brian. You know, it's they say mistakes don't define us; they refine us. So, if you can tell us some mistakes you made in your career, which we can learn from, we all made a lot of mistakes.
I don't know if we have enough time, Amit, to go through all my mistakes. I would say there was a point earlier in my career where I felt, so I'll define this maybe as a category of mistakes, where young attorneys are so driven to be right, that I think I got blinded early in my career, where I felt I was so sort of devoutly holding a position because I believed it to be right, that I was losing the bigger picture of how, as right as my position was, it wasn't gonna help solve the problem, that was being presented to me in that moment. And, uh, it sort of maybe sort of, got me stuck. I think I got stuck in that practicing law, it can be sort of a messy, and sort of weighing risks and balancing pros and cons. It's not so much about being right or wrong. It's about understanding sort of what is the key objective, what is the risk tolerance we're willing to accept, what are the best practices of how in the industry that you're in that these risks are mitigated or addressed, and getting comfortable with sort of being a little uncomfortable. Um, I think more junior attorneys are so fixated on coming with the right answer, that when the right answer just is not physically possible in the moment that you're in, it's just not plausible, or it's very impractical. You need to see beyond the right answer. Maybe the right answer is the starting point, or is maybe a grounding point of where you want to start. But when pressed, you have to understand that you can't be fixated on just being right. You need to understand the bigger picture, the context of what problem you're trying to solve, because there isn't usually one answer or one right answer. And opening your mind to sort of more possibilities, I think, is critical, and makes you more of a dynamic business partner and lawyer and problem solver. Because if you think that there's just one right answer, all it will take is someone to disagree with you, and then you're done. You have nothing more to offer. So it's really about thinking about options and choices and paths, and not necessarily being fixated on a right answer versus a wrong answer. And I encountered that a few different times early in my career, and I had a real awakening that this was something I was going to have to. This was a me problem that I had to develop myself through. And once I had that sort of mindset, it really changed how I approached the bridging of legal problems and commercial issues, which has, I think, allowed me to progress in my career.
Mm, mm. So providing options to your stakeholders and internal clients, and not just giving them one path of this is the only path you should follow, you must follow.
Right, and getting that stuck in my head too, that I shouldn't be looking to find a single answer, like, that people aren't coming to me necessarily to find a single answer. They're looking for a pathway, they're looking for options, they're looking for choices, they're looking for, the easy way or the harder ways, the riskier ways, the more risk adjusted ways. They're not looking for one answer. They're looking for, help me understand the framework that we're operating in, and let's talk about different choices and options. We're not coming to you to find the solution. We're asking you to show us the landscape. And it's that is usually what our role is. It's not They're not coming to us to necessarily solve a business issue by ourselves, but it's in showing them the landscape that these possible solutions become really visible. And then you can be work part of the team that identifies which pathway should we take, what are the pros and cons. And I think, once you are seen as someone who can help do that and be part of that journey, you become someone they want to bring to more problems and issues and challenging problems. And that's where you really increase your value to the organization.
Got it. Got it. Brian, tell us the best advice you ever got.
So, it was funny that, a lot of the advice that I'm pointing to goes back early in my career, a really formative stage. But, I was still in the law firms, and, I'd been I was thinking it was like an annual review, and, the person who was the leader of the commercial practice said to me how things were going, and I shared how I thought things were going, and she then asked me if I had any things that weren't going well. And at that time, a lot of my work was really focused on M&A and VC and venture capital work, and I really wanted to get more exposure into intellectual property. And I don't remember exactly how I characterized it or phrased it, but I said, "Gee, I really love the work that I'm doing, but I'd love more exposure in these other areas." And she she closed the door. I mean, she got up and closed the door behind her. I'm like, "Oh my goodness, did I just say something to offend her?" And she said, "You have to remember, you are in charge of your career now. There is no one else that's in charge of your career. I'm not in charge of your career. The partners who work down the hall are not in charge of your career. The associates that work with you are not in charge of your career. You are in charge of your career. If you want more exposure to intellectual property, we have a huge intellectual property practice here, but you're going to have to build that bridge. You're going to have to figure out how to get it. You shouldn't wait for this to come falling from the sky." And, she was so serious as she said this. This really sort of struck a nerve in me, but it has driven a lot of my thinking through the rest of my career, that if if there's something that's missing, or if I want more exposure, or if I need, to make a change, that is really, no one else is going to do that for me except for me. And it sort of unlocked me and gave me some freedom and a kick in the pants and drive to go and get that experience and that exposure. But I didn't wait for it anymore to come. I really took the initiative to bring myself to those partners, to that work. And it's sort of something that's a voice that has stayed in my head even to this day. That if you want to see changes in your career, that you're going to have to make them happen, and you shouldn't wait.
Brilliant. Brilliant. So you are responsible for yourself. Uh, that's a beautiful advice. What's the worst advice you ever received, Brian?
Huh. Um, the worst advice I ever received. Um, I, so I would say, as I was progressing through my in-house journey to get to the point of to where I am today, um, there were um, there was a particular mentor at the time in my life who told me to sort of not explore certain opportunities that were very different from my past. And his thinking at the time was that there's, the number of jobs in the job market is very tight. You should really focus on where your experience really sort of like directly matches up with these next opportunities. And as as I was trying to process that advice, I was looking at the opportunities that were out there in the market at the time, and there were so many others that were just way more interesting and attractive to me, but they didn't really line up with my background and expertise. And i- letting some of those go by, and then realizing that that was just a big mistake, and sort of that actually launched this whole new direction in my career. Once I did sort of understand that I'm going to have to pursue these other careers, not just because that's where the opportunities are, but that's really where my interest is. So I would say, not to limit yourself, and not to feel like your past or your prior experience needs to define sort of those next moves that you make. Again, listening to that voice, like you're going to have to direct your career, and so that was unhelpful advice at the time.
So basically, your past should not define your future.
You shouldn't limit it. I mean, obviously, your past helps decide. You learn a lot from your past, but don't let it define you. And if there are especially in today's, with technology and industries changing so rapidly, there's just so much new out there. If you become averse to change and doing things that are new, I think you're going to be left at the station. So I think you shouldn't feel that your past is necessarily has to define you. It sort of it's from where you draw a lot of knowledge and experience, so it's important, but don't let it define you.
Beautiful. And if we go a little bigger here, the bigger question perhaps can be whose advice to follow? There's so many people giving us advice when we are younger in our career. Everybody is saying something. How do we know which advice to follow?
Well, I mean, I think you should be soliciting advice from all different places. So I don't think you should be going to a single source for advice. As you're pursuing careers in the law, you should talk to in-house attorneys. You should talk to firm attorneys. You should try and get a diversity of advice. It's usually the synthesizing of that advice that you make yourself that will help sort of give you clarity on what makes the most sense for you. So, I mean, I think you shouldn't just be sort of focusing on one voice or one source. I would say look for advice from multiple sources, because it's not that one is right and one is wrong. It's really about there might be just parts of all of them that just really are what make the right advice for you. But you won't get that if you limit yourself to just maybe one voice or one person.
Hmm. Makes sense. Tell us, Brian, how has your relationship with money evolved over time?
Um, well, I would say earlier in my career, it was especially as you were an associate in a law firm, a lot of my peers would pick firms over or positions over who offered the highest salary. Um, but for me, it was very abundantly clear early that I needed to learn. When you graduate from law school, you have a lot of skills and understanding of legal frameworks, but you really haven't been developed into a practicing attorney who's ready to jump on the case and get work done. There's just so much you have to learn. So for me, I started in the way I made my first sort of career choice was the firm that I thought was going to help develop me and was showing the most interest in developing me to make me more useful and bring me up the learning curve the soonest. But I saw a lot of my contemporaries, pick jobs based on who had the highest salary. Um, Over time, I would say that as you move from, the law firm space to the in-house world, the salaries tend to change and they tend to be lower in in-house companies, but you have opportunities for equity and other upsides that you don't have necessarily in a law firm practice. So you just have to understand that compensation and the forms of compensation are just going to are likely to change over time, and that just looking at that salary number, if that's all you're looking at, it could really sort of distort or maybe lead you to make some poor decisions for yourself. But to really understand not just the current compensation, but the compensation path that you might be able to avail yourself to by the different decisions that you make.
Hmm. Hmm. In the US, lawyers work very hard, specifically in the US. They have been trained to work hard. There's a massive, they're massively ethical also. Do you think in in the US, specifically in the US, lawyers pay too much for their money?
They're paid.
Means
They're,
too much for their money.
yeah.
Means they perhaps missing the event of their spouse or a birthday party of a
Yes.
child or an important functions. Are lawyers paying too much for their money?
Yes. 100%, especially earlier in their career. Um, and I think it's what drives a lot of people to have that dissatisfaction that I experience with firm life, because it's really hard, especially in a firm environment where you are, you're measured entirely by your time and how many hours you bill, and then they pit all the attorneys up against each other to compete essentially for who can bill the most hours. Time is just a finite resource that, if you consume all your time at work, you're missing life. But it's hard because the power dynamics are such in law firms where you're not in a position to say no. You're not really given the freedom to say no, and it's this, it results in this pattern where you're just eventually working what feels like all the time. And yes, it can be very debilitating. Lots of people sort of distance themselves from families, they lose touch with friends, and it can lead to a real dissatisfaction with the job entirely. So yeah, that is something to definitely keep your to especially for early in your early stage attorneys, to keep an eye on, and to try and to build as much, kind of protect your time as much as possible. It's hard to do early in your career. But yes, especially here in the US, it can be and it can also lead to like burnout, fatigue, health issues. I mean, it can get extreme in some cases.
Yes. So when Abraham Lincoln was a lawyer, as you know. Abraham Lincoln started his law practice, and he was never used to work per hour. He used to work per outcome. He's gonna charge you X for Y, for the Y the work that you're doing. And gradually, lawyers started working per hour. It was beneficial for them because there's a per hour regime in the country. Lawyers want to put more hours and make more money by putting more hours in the day. So when I talk to journal counsel, I've spoken to hundreds of journal counsel on my podcast. Do you think the per hour regime in the US is unfair and should be discontinued?
Well, it is definitely.
In other words, the General Counsel or CLO should pay for the outcome and not for the hours.
Yeah, and I think, and we're trying to do that in bits and pieces. We've negotiated fixed fee arrangements and alternative fee arrangements around sort of high volume predictable work. So for patent applications, we have a fixed fee for each application. For certain sort of standard contract reviews, we've tried to move from billable hours to good fixed fee arrangements, and that's not only better from the standpoint of, paying for outcomes, it's better from a budgetary and being more predictable on what our costs and our budgets are gonna need to be, and forecasting those. Um, it's a real challenge in the in-house, in the in-house environment, to have these annual budgetary meetings or quarterly budgetary meetings, and sitting down with your executive team saying, "How much do you think we're gonna spend in legal this quarter or this year?" And, we can't predict all of the issues and problems and challenges that the company might encounter, or not just negative, all the opportunities that might fall our way too. Having more predictability in some of the fee arrangements definitely helps us with that exercise too. But I think you're right. I think, um, moving more to sort of like outcome based fee arrangements is definitely um, definitely higher value for the client. It'll just be hard to kind of change the whole legal firm sort of industry that's based on the billable hour. But we're seeing it in bits and pieces, and I think there's a good chance that more of these opportunities will present themselves, and we're definitely looking to do that here at SimpliSafe.
Brilliant. So, Brian, tell us, how do you choose your trusted outside counsel? What is your
Yes.
metric?
Yeah, so there isn't one way, but we use a variety of ways. First and foremost, referrals, both from um, from our team here in house and other trusted general counsel relationships that I have in the community. So referrals are great. We also like to take a look at obviously the fees. We like to understand the attorneys, not just the firm, but the attorney's success or experience in that particular issue or matter that we're working on. Um, and then we then usually talk to two or three firms. We like to sometimes if it's depending on the nature of the project, we might get an estimate or a budget or a sort of a plan of attack of how they will approach this work. And then based on those conversations, we usually have a good feel just from talking through the issue and how they're approaching it and their background. Usually the ones who are the best fit to work with us kind of it sort of becomes pretty apparent. And it isn't always the lowest cost or the firm that has the longest history. There's usually an interpersonal dynamic about it that we can kind of see ourselves working well with that particular attorney and some confidence just that kind of that emanates itself from those conversations that this person sort of gets us, he gets this particular issue, and that we could see working well with in this particular matter. And that's usually it's usually a combination of all of those.
Absolutely. Uh, Tell us, Brian, how do GCs view IP versus the CEO? How do they view IP?
Yeah, it really varies from company to company and CEO from CEO. Um, here, when you work at a product company, um, we a lot of times IP is sort of thought of in the design of the product. Um, obviously, when you take a step back, there's the software, there are the services, there is y- y- there is sort of the delivery mechanisms. There is the networking infrastructure. So it really kind of can depend on the nature of your company and the products and services, and that your company is producing and making. But depending on the experience of the CEO, some CEOs see it as a defensive tool and making sure that we can save ourselves from being sued. Others see it more as a offensive way of sort of building a moat to keep competitors from more easily competing in or coming or copying your particular innovation. And I've learned that you shouldn't assume anything when you're working with sort of management on IP. It's very complicated, and people have very different backgrounds and level of expertise. So it's really important, and in the role of the GC to understand first of all what the CEO's sort of understanding and expectations are, um, but also sort of what is the IP strategy? Because there's also a big misconception of, you know, it's IP, so just go ahead and protect it. Um, there isn't a one size fits all way of doing it. Um, and we've learned that it's really important to get a good strategy in place so that you're meeting the expectations of the business. Um, at a prior company, the CEO would say we should have our IP protected everywhere. And then when the legal department tried to react to that, the budgets went way out of whack. And the same CEO called the GC back into the office and said, "How could we be spending so much in IP?" And, the general counsel said, "Well, you said protected everywhere." Um, so it's important that you have a meeting of the minds, you have a strategy, and it's something that you review frequently because, lots of things can change in your industry and in your company. We have, for example, here at SimpliSafe, we had a first generation security camera that at the time was our only security camera. We defended, we protected it extremely with a multifaceted strategy. as we live and breathe now, that's just one of many cameras, and it would be a imbalanced sense of our budget if we continue to spend the same amount of resources on that early stage camera today. We now have a bigger fleet of cameras we need to protect, but we need a different strategy for that. So it's something that should be reviewed frequently, and making sure you have the right strategy so that you're staying within the right realms, you get the right protections, but you're not running off any kind of deep ends.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So has IP gone up in your priority or has gone down?
Has what gone up?
The IP has gone up in your priority or has gone down?
It has gone up. It has gone up. I think it's become the as our products and services, at the company that I'm at today, we have, biometric processing. We've got facial detection. We've got, indoor cameras. We've got outdoor cameras. We've got many more. We have a bigger fleet of products that are doing more services and have more technology in them. So for us, it has been a growing focus area, and it's become more complex as you know issues of privacy and AI have their own regulatory schemes regimes that weigh in on this too. So it isn't just IP. It's sort of a bigger legal framework that it has to fit into.
Do you believe IP is slow and expensive?
Is inexpensive?
Slow. Yeah, it is slow and expensive. Slow in the sense it takes a lot of time for patents to get granted, like 3 or 4 years sometimes, and it's
Yeah.
expensive. Do you believe so?
Yes, it is definitely it definitely, not only is it's slow and expensive, but it needs to occur. It has very particular timing requirements too. So it needs to occur at very specific points in a product development cycle, which if you don't have good alignment with the business can catch folks off guard and create what feels like interruptions or impositions from legal during critical stage of product development. We tried to make sure that we sort of layer in the work that we need to do sort of seamlessly throughout the development cycle so that the work of pulling the patents together and the applications together doesn't catch anyone by surprise or get sort of overlooked, because that can then sort of disrupt timing and tight timing and schedules for different activities to take place. So yes, it's all of those things. It's slow, it's expensive, and it's very particular and precise in timing. So it takes a bit of work and coordination to make sure it requires the right people. It can't just be done by just anyone. There are the inventors and the people who are closest to the innovations that need to be directly involved. So it's consuming their time and attention too. Um, and these are all, competing for time in a very busy, hectic development cycle. That needs to be carefully scheduled and planned as well.
Absolutely. And when the inventors and engineers submitting ideas or IDFs for patent-worthy ideas, what do you think is the best way to get their ideas out of their heads?
Yeah. Well, we have an invention harvesting sort of program where we solicit to the various development teams, um, and try to proactively solicit the ideas and the inventions. We also have an inventor recognition program, which uh, rewards and recognizes and appreciates that great ideas can come from anywhere in the business. You don't need to have an engineer title or a marketing title or a product title. So, we try to sort of highlight and innovation and make it a sort of a proactive um, drive for everyone here at the company that they can be part of, and to try and create a reward system to reward ideas that are then selected, that are then, we get applications for. In fact, tonight, just coincidentally, one of our inventors is being recognized here in Boston. They're recognizing sort of top innovations this year, and one of the SimpliSafe patents and one of our inventors is being recognized tonight. So I'll be going to that event later tonight to celebrate one of our inventors. But it's this recognition and this attention that we put on, and we will sort of try to promote throughout the company. And I think it can be a self-fulfilling prophecy there. The more people who are aware, who want to participate, who are driven to participate, who then sort of solicit through invention harvesting. We found that we're making progress. We still have a long way to go, but it's doing all of these things and more that we will continue to think and dream up, I hope. But it requires everyone. It can't just be the legal department. It really requires a top down push from the company to kind of try and pull all the great ideas out. Because you know uh, they're all here, but getting them out and extracting them is the hard part.
Absolutely, I understand that. Let's switch our gear to AI. Brian, tell us how big is a legal team currently at SimpliSafe?
So our team is about 15 people total. Um, uh, 12 attorneys and 3 legal professionals. We also have contractors and other folks who support us, but that's the core team right there.
Okay. And how much of AI do you use currently? What kind of tools do you use?
So our team all has access to and uses ChatGPT and Gemini. We are also currently we are going through a procurement process for more of a legal focused tool to replace our contract lifecycle management tool, which we have, but it isn't really one that is, um, has strong AI capabilities. We think that we can get a new contract lifecycle management tool that will bring more AI tools to the team in the contracting and the intake and the redlining and the uh, further strengthen our self-servicing capabilities. We have self-service capabilities today, but we think we can do a lot more in that area. So, we're still in the early stages, though we are actively using AI, and are being sort of encouraged to, and it's part of all of our practice. But we're looking to get some legal dedicated tools to help make it, kind of superpower us as a team.
Mm-hmm. And what keeps you up at night when it comes to AI?
Yeah. So we are not only, as a company, incorporating AI and the efficiency tools and the productivity tools across the company. We are also at the same time bringing more AI enabled features to our products and services. In the area of security cameras and security monitoring, there's so much that can be done to both filter out noise and identify the really more urgent issues as opposed to the more innocuous trees blowing in the wind versus something a lot more sinister going on. So there's a ton of development in this space. What keeps me up is just the way the regulations on AI, especially as they overlap with privacy, um, the regulations are sort of, always trail the technological innovation. So it's making sure that we, as our company is actively doing more and more to introduce more AI into our products, our services, into the back office work that we do, is keeping up with the regulations and making sure that we are building enough flexibility into our designs that as new regulations come into play, not just here in the US, but also in the UK where we have operations as well. Different regulations out there, of course, but that we are building enough flexibility into our design that we can continue to um, uh, make the changes necessary to stay at pace with the regulations. But the patchwork of regulations are going to keep us busy for a long time, as it's really state to state here in the U.S. And I think as of last told, I think there's something like 150 bills thereabout that are sort of meandering their way through their legislative process as we speak, and that they're all. I'm sure there's a lot of similarities between them, but there's going to be differences too. And as a service that serves the whole country, we're going to have to figure out a way of keeping pace with all of them.
So basically, making sure that legal is actually helping AI propagate and not become a hindrance to adoption of AI in the company.
Yeah, and not creating an outsized risk to the business too. So where the regulatory environment changing at the same time that our products are changing, and that this is just a new area of the law to begin with. You put all of those new and developing uh, uh, components together, it just leaves a lot of risk and unknowns. it's not slowing us down, but it's keeping us busy to kind of keep our eyes on what's coming around the corner, and and to be really paying attention to what the new regulations entail, so that we can build the or create the visibility to our design and our development teams to what's coming next, so we can build in that flexibility. Again, the idea not so much of, you know, ripping out products and ripping out services, but building in the flexibility so we can adjust them on the back end, and and push out the updates that might be needed, whether it's new consents, new, controls, new toggles that we need to put into our apps, um, or designing sort of geolocation so that the system in our back end knows that your camera is set up in California, whereas this camera might be set up in Texas, and to preset the settings accordingly, so that it's the same product and service, but it's going to be complying with both set of regulations, and it happens kind of seamlessly, and that nothing that the customer has to worry about.
Hmm. Makes sense. Do you think junior lawyers, when they use AI, do they get a leverage, or are they at a disadvantage?
Um, I don't think they're at a disadvantage. I think where they're at a disadvantage is, like with anything else, is understanding you can't be too reliant on what the AI pushes back out at you, um, and understanding when the feedback from AI comes, which part clearly makes sense and seems spot on, and then there are some parts where you can just tell it misunderstood, or your prompt wasn't precise enough, and or it filled in some gaps unhelpfully. A junior attorney isn't going to have that perspective to maybe know where to push back and know where some of the maybe more obvious issues lie. So, I think as that will be something that, as the legal profession adopts more and more AI tools, we know there are accuracy issues. We know there are, um, you know, places where it's filling in the gaps with what the tool thinks you want to hear sometimes, and it's making sure that you have the controls and training and systems in place to push back so that you can refine those areas. Oftentimes, it can come in the imprecision of your prompts. Sometimes it's just, sort of, missing the mark, and it takes a bit of experience to know that, the feedback that you're getting needs to be adjusted.
Hmm. So one of the things that we have learning with AI is that it tells you what you want to hear. It gives you what you want,
Yep.
not what you should have, but what you want.
Yes.
So how are you able to counter that?
Well, I mean, part of it is with the experience of knowing that it's doing that. The second part is in the prompts being very specific and explicit to not do that, um, and to push back, and to have as a regular pushback for the advice that you can't. You're going to need to then check whatever the feedback is. So you can't rely on it too heavily. It's a great starting point. It's a great way of getting ideas and for issue spotting and for identifying a whole host of different potential issues and questions and topics. But you can't turn off your brain. You have to continue to have good vigilance, and the tools will get smarter. But you need to continue to kind of spot check what it's pushing back at you, and not just depending on it too quickly. We you can and then you can start seeing patterns as you start using it more, where it's tending to do this and where more frequently, so you can build sort of stronger prompting and stronger controls over those areas, so that you can just be, have a higher sense of, sort of expectations of where things are likely to be a little bit less accurate.
Hmm. So Brian, suppose you were graduating in 2026. How would you restart your career in 2026?
Yeah. So, I mean, as we were talking about AI, I think all attorneys who are starting, I know that there's a fear and concern that the AI is going to wipe out all of the junior attorneys, or reduce hiring. So I would try to advise everyone who's in law school, if they're not teaching it there exactly, is to become very literate with the AI tools to really understand from your law school days. I mean, there may be sort of rules in law school not to use it for your schoolwork, but I think you should not then not get the experience and practice and learnings needed to become literate in the tools themselves, because I think the attorneys, the junior attorneys who I think are going to be more attractive to the firms and the jobs sort of on the earlier stages are the ones who are going to already be literate in these tools, already not feel comfortable and not feel overwhelmed starting a career where they're going to be using these tools as part of their practice and demonstrating some proficiency early on. I think that will I think that will be extremely helpful, and make that sort of early stage of your career. There's already going to be a lot of adjustment and a lot of steep learning curves anyway. But if you can already understand that, you're gonna need to have strong AI literacy from the very beginning, you could have a real leg up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If you could coach your younger self, like 27-year-old
Yeah.
Brian, what would you tell him?
Yeah, I mean, not to be repetitive, from where we started in this conversation, but I think to really have an open mind about what success is and what sort of career goals should be, um, and to again not feel too restricted by where I started. And
What is success for you, Brian? What is success for you?
so I so the things that are sort of my calling card for success are making impact, um, helping deliver amazing outcomes, and for being part of teams that are sort of growing, developing, and solving really complex problems and challenges, and doing work that really matters. When those factors are present, I am fully engaged and I am feeling very successful, and I find my work rewarding. Um, and so that those are the environments that I'm going to always want to surround myself. If you had asked me that question, if you'd asked a younger version of myself that question, I wouldn't have said any of those things, I don't think. And I was more focused on the name of the firm, the salary that it was offering, and what the career path was, or the year progression to partner was. And as it turns out, none of those things really mattered to my career at the time. I would have told you those are the only things that mattered. So hopefully, I could have talked some sense into my younger self. I don't think my younger self would have believed me, but I think that would have been the best advice to give.
Brilliant. My last question to you,
Yeah.
Brian, is if a GC is watching this show right now, what mistake would you urge them not to make?
Hmm. What mistake would I tell them not to, what would I urge them? What mistake would I have them what would I tell them to avoid? What mistake I would ask them not to make? Um, I I think sort of answering it from a bigger picture perspective, I would say that, you know, uh, I think sometimes where GCs can get themselves into a little bit of trouble is where, sort of like in the AI example that you gave, where you get conditioned to try to kind of give advice that is what you think um, the party asking for you wants to hear, and that you feel sort of compelled to try and give advice that sort of uh, lines up with, oh, we can, whatever that business person or leader or business partner is telling you, you can say, yes, we can do that. Um, where I like to and sort of where I like to pivot is first understanding before, you might be feeling compelled to sort of answer the question that you're being asked. And what I have found is you're often being given a very leading question, and you're oftentimes put on the spot without having the requisite amount of information or context. my what I've learned in sort of my later years here in my career is to not feel so compelled to answer that exact question that you're being asked, but to stop and push back, not push back, but make sure you understand, well, what is the problem that you're really trying to solve? What is the problem we're trying to solve? What is the issue that you're experiencing? What is the endpoint we're trying to get to? Because sometimes, if you're being forced to answer this very narrow question, there really isn't a great answer, and you're sort of being pressured to give a kind of answer a very loaded question. I would tell other GCs to take the freedom of to kind of push back and ask for the bigger picture. Oftentimes the very specific question you're being asked isn't really the actual question that they want answered. There's actually a different outcome that's there that would give you a lot more freedom and air and opportunity to answer and give a lot more um, have a lot more choice in your answer. But if you're really staying very narrowly in trying to answer the exact question that was asked, you might be sort of, kind of between a rock and a hard place. And I know that very smart, clever attorneys will kill themselves to find that clever answer, but the actual probably better answer is one that will be informed by the broader context of what's actually driving the question. And I think you can get to a much better place with the business and with the business partner if you tease that up out and you ask for that broader picture. You'll find that actually there's lots of different ways of getting to the endpoint that they're looking for or solving the problem, but maybe not in the exact specific way that they were driving you to. So I know that's probably not a very specific kind of answer to your question, but I think that mindset has really helped me as I've developed in my career, so I don't have to feel so stuck in the fact pattern that's being given to me, but rather push back and show that I really want to understand the commercial issue, the customer issue, the technical issue, the technological issue, because oftentimes if you sort of see the bigger picture, there's a broader spectrum of answers and that can get you to a much better place.
Absolutely. Brian, thank you so much for your
Thank
time
you.
today. Some beautiful questions, beautiful answers, and you were so authentic, so calm while answering those questions. Really appreciate your wisdom. I'm sure this is very valuable to our listeners here.
Yep.
Thank you so much again for your time.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.